Good evening, everyone. Good evening, everyone. My devotion today is going to be centered around Mount Nebo. Mount Nebo is the place where Moses went up on top of the mountain to watch the Israelites cross the Jordan River and enter into the Promised Land. It would just be an awesome sight to be able to see the culmination of everything that God had done in the book of Exodus. After wandering around for 40 years in the wilderness, with such dramatic ways that God took care of them, with water from a rock, with manna that we don't even know what it is, with quail that just flew in from the east every time that God decided he was going to give them quail. And then even before that, the dramatic exit from Egypt and all the plagues that God did in order to show that he was the most powerful God and that the gods of Egypt really weren't gods at all. All of those things just make me want to say, let's go to Mount Nebo, watch Moses, watch the Israelites enter into the Promised Land. I think that would be an awesome sight. I was able to be at Mount Nebo several times, and looking down, I see the map of Israel, and I can visualize kind of how the Israelites may have come in, and it was an awesome place to be, and I think I would really enjoy being there during that time. But there's something in that story right there that I want to encourage you with, and it comes to the fact that Mount Nebo is where Moses went to watch the Israelites go into the Promised Land. And the reason I say that is because if you remember from Scripture, Moses got pretty fed up with the Israelites one time because they were crying out for water again. After all that God had done for them, they cried out one more time, and Moses just really got frustrated with them, and he prayed to God and said, God, give them water one more time. And God said, speak to the rock, and the rock will come forth with water. But Moses was so upset that he struck the rock like God had told him in a previous time. But I think there's probably more to it than just the fact that he didn't hear the instruction of God. I think it was more than he didn't fully comprehend what God was saying. I think it was more about Moses was mad. He was really frustrated with the Israelites, and he just did what he wanted to do. And he struck the rock, and of course God brought water forth, but Moses was in trouble. He got in trouble from God, and at the end of that situation, God spoke to Moses and said, because of your unfaithfulness, you will not inherit the Promised Land. So flash forward to Mount Nebo. Moses gets up on top of the mountain, and he is not able to actually enter into the Promised Land. So yes, I would love to be there during the awesome transition from the east side of the Jordan to the west side of the Jordan, and watch the Israelites accomplish what God had finally delivered them to be. But I also want to see the sadness of Moses after all of his faithfulness, after all that he did, his goodness all over the place, his patience so much, and yet he disqualified himself because he was unfaithful at that one point. It reminds me of the scripture from 1 Corinthians chapter 9. I believe it's verse 26 and 7. And it says this: Now everyone who competes exercises self-control in everything. However, they do it to receive a crown that will fade away. We receive a crown that will never fade away. Therefore, I do not run like someone who is running aimlessly, or box like someone who's just beating in the air. Instead, I discipline my body and bring it under strict control, so that, after preaching to others, I myself might not be disqualified. It doesn't mean that every time you sin, you're going to be disqualified from heaven, so you better get it right. But it does mean that just because we say the right words doesn't mean our heart is right. And just because we do a lot of good things doesn't mean that our heart is good. And just because we show up at church doesn't mean that we're worshiping God. It just means that we're doing good things, we're worshiping God at church, or we're showing up at church, and we're saying the right words. But God doesn't judge according to the outward appearance. He judges according to the heart. And for Moses on that day, God knew that Moses' heart was not good. And God knew that Moses was making a bad decision for reasons that did not have anything to do with God himself. And so I want to pray that prayer that Paul prayed, which is to basically say, hey, I got to stay disciplined. I got to stay focused. No matter who I am, no matter what my reputation, no matter what my stature, no matter how successful I am or lack of success, I have to be faithful to God, and I have to discipline myself to be faithful to God. You guys have a great night, and I want to encourage you to think of that challenge and put that to your heart as well. You guys have a great night.